You remember a couple videos ago I said that Suzak Inc. with Master of Disguise was going through a weird change with its boss design as the later levels dragged on, and it was just becoming bizarre for the bizarreness' sake? Yeah, I think we're starting to hit the peak of that idea that Suzak, for whatever reason, went with in order to design this game. It was alluded to earlier in the level because this entire castle has kind of a weird occupancy of the royal family, and the ultimate tipping point of that was Stuffy the Dolphin, the king of the castle. And even though he's a dolphin, it didn't turn out that his castle was a water level, so I don't know, maybe he's extremely introverted and didn't actually want to go anywhere except for this little paddling pool, in comparison to the entire castle isn't exactly going to allow him to go anywhere, since canonically, apparently he can't do very well outside of water, even though a lot of the occupants of this place are ghosts, so I don't know why the heck he's not spiritual. And then the weirdness continues to the boss fight itself. It's still a traditional boss fight, but it's wrapping up an additional type of boss fight into the normal and creating some sort of strange hybrid. We're going to be seeing it a bit more in the next boss fight in the series, but here they add in a bit of a sort of race mechanic, where you have to be beating Stuffy the Dolphin. You're not trying to kill him, your objective is to get a door open, and you're just beating up Stuffy the Dolphin so that his magic will weaken and you can get through the door to the next bit. It's a concept that can work really well. Race boss fights work incredibly well, but they also have to be tightly designed and conceptualized. Otherwise, it can kind of fly off the rails and screw up what set piece you were going for. And Stuffy does sort of do that, does sort of not too. It doesn't have the satisfaction of a regular boss fight because we're not trying to kill Stuffy, and after everything's said and done, it's very easy to continue to believe that Stuffy is still alive, doing his dolphin thing for his dolphin people. And we're just leaving the castle as it stands to go find the next Wishstone piece. It feels like this was just an obstruction created by Count Cannoli, who bullshitted his way into becoming friendly with the Dolphin clan to the point that he could get the king to do all of this stuff. But what really harms the boss fight overall is the gameplay design, and just like Kabloom, it's too complicated for its own good. We're getting the Barfatronic thing again. But instead of including a shadow weakness that the game has absolutely no way of telling you about, the gameplay is just too complicated and annoying to really give us that tightly conceived and satisfying payoff of defeating Stuffy. Because, again, this is a game on the DS, so complicated gameplay isn't exactly its forte. It's a very hit and miss system because of what you ask it to do. Nintendo gave it a lot of versatility as a console between the buttons that it has and the stylus center that you can work with. But the complication in trying to put in so many things can ultimately harm a project in of itself, and that's sort of what happened with Stuffy, because it requires not only multiple costume changes, but multiple costume changes on a dime. And if the video on Barfatronic was anything to go by, quick costume changes with what the control scheme they picked with the stylus thing isn't exactly working out to the benefit, because it's a very fiddly system. If you get it even slightly wrong, the DS can misinterpret what you were trying to do, where you could have just been doing this with buttons and just sidestepping the entire problem. If you need to do costume changes in Master of Disguise and do them quickly, then it's a hit and miss sort of affair, because if you try and draw what you need to get into the scientist form in order to punch Stuffy, which is a line surrounded by a circle, and you're trying to do that quickly because you're panicking, because you need to do it fast, or you're missing your opportunity, and then you have to deal with a bunch of other things that might cause you damage and just screw over the whole boss fight, then it can be a bit easier to completely screw it up. It wouldn't be so bad if it was a less than complicated costume change, like we were changing into the dragon form or something. It's very easy to do that, but since they chose the space form and the science form, which also have similar costume change symbols that you have to draw on Wario, which just complicates it further. We're getting pretty close to the end of the game, so we're unlocking all of the suits, which means that there is a lot of costume change symbols that you have to draw throughout the game, which means it's easier for the system to misinterpret what you're drawing. So it doesn't work all that well. And if you miss the split second thing, like I said, then the Dolphin has a chance of hitting you with some pseudo bullet hell type of attacks and just coming out from the water to do his own thing. There's a lot of stuff you have to keep in the air because he's summoning these little minions on the top of the screen, while Stuffy is permanently occupying the bottom of it. So it turns frantic, it turns frenetic, and the costume changes that you have to pull off, the jumps that you have to make so that you're avoiding getting damaged, the button that you have to push in order to get that split-second window to actually damage Stuffy open. It's just too much being thrown at the player all at once, and it causes somewhat of a headache, and a bunch of ruined attempts to actually get damage, culminating in possibly a loss or two to Stuffy, just because the game just asked you to do too much. If the game could have toned it down, scaled things back massively, redrawn this whole frickin' thing, and made it simpler with a single arena, and not the split-second stuff. Or at least the split-second stuff with one single costume, so that you wouldn't have to deal with the drawing things on the fly problem. Then this could have actually been pretty good. Stuffy has a pretty interesting backstory. He's an interesting character, and if they gave him a bit more abilities and escalated the boss fight more, instead of what they actually chose, this could have been really good. It had a lot of potential, but as it stands, Suzak just piled on so much stuff onto this boss fight that it just cracked the legs under it, and it didn't fall apart completely, but it's definitely not the most fun thing that Suzak could have went with in order to get this boss fight into the game. And I suppose for the castle that was being run by the 64th generation of Dolphin Kings, I guess that's kind of disappointing. Maybe something during the end game will be able to justify the game a bit better, show off a bit more design chops from Suzak, because they haven't exactly been hitting the quality button exactly on these last few boss fights that we've looked at. I mean, I'll give them props for doing really out-of-the-box things and thinking creatively with this Nintendo DS game, but they have to have the gameplay to back it up, otherwise you get stuff like this, and stuff like this ain't gonna make people favored to your video game.